Alright, so I'm back with another tutorial. There has been some interest in creating Pancrase and UWFi and that sort of rules for just to give up or to mix up some of the the MMA rule sets or the shoot fighting rule sets. Um, so I decided to tackle UWFi since that's one of my favorite promotions. Um, so I'm gonna walk you through basically how to create a UWFi style match in Fire Pro World. Um, Basically, if I was you guys, I would do the First Blood or the Mask versus Mask match tutorials first. Kind of get an idea of how to work with matches. Nothing in here is going to be that much more advanced, but it'll give you a solid framework to work off of, and I'm assuming that you have that framework because you're going to start with the project file from either your First Blood match or your Mask versus Mask or Mask versus Mask match. Man, that's a tongue twister. So I'm gonna assume that you have that done already. When I reference things like, well, open your more match options form or more match types form or whatever you called it in that project and add the UWFi rules radio button or checkbox or add it to the list, whatever you decided to use to allow users to select match types. I'm going to assume that you have that already created, and I'm not going to walk you through creating that. So, yeah. So that's it with us today for the setup, and that's what we're going to be working on today. The match itself is not particularly complicated, so yeah. Anyway, let's get started here. So the first thing that I want to really show you guys, and I don't think that I've talked to you guys about this, is how to add descriptions to the patcher. You guys have, if you followed, you've done a couple of mods already, and I don't think I've ever touched on this, but it's basically it's like writing a hook, except instead of writing hook, you put group description in the brackets, and then it's just group description, and then parentheses, and then the parameters are group, and in this case I have group equals UWFi name, and then in this case I have name equals UWFi match, and then there's description, which is what the patcher will show over on the right hand side when you click it. And my description is description equals allows players to have a UWFi style match. And that's it. That's all you need in order to add a little description to your mods in the patcher. So that will help kind of separate everything. So, but yeah, alrighty then. So I am going to close this out and load up the actual one that I am going to need to reference, because this one has my match selection form and everything, which I'm going to need in the code. So if I tried to do it in a new project, it would essentially go nuts and tell me I couldn't do it, or that I would have to create a whole new form, and I don't want to do that. So but what I will do is, see, this is the UWFi match all completed already, so I'm going to open a new class and basically recreate it with you guys. That way you can see what I'm doing. So to create a new class, you just go up to where it says, my project is called First Blood because that was the first match we did. Yours might be called More Match Options or something like that, or More Match Types, or Mask versus Mask, or whatever you started with. But click on that, go to Add, and then go down here to Class. And I'm going to call this UWFi Tutorial. You probably shouldn't use tutorial because I already have a UWFi rules match. That's why I didn't use that. So the first thing that you want to do when you create a new a new class is add your usings. So we're going to go using DG using Unity Engine. That way we can get those right out of the way real quick. You won't need to add references because you should have already done that for your other matches. However, if you have not added carlzilla.dll, the mod suite, you will need it for this match, because if players are using the mod suite and they have the 5 count after a rope break is on, the points will not be deducted and it will be a giant... It just won't work at all. And I mean, that's a big part of the UWFi rules. So you need to go ahead and add a reference to carlzilla.dll at this point. This will make your new mod dependent on having the mod suite. So I would go ahead and get that, and do that. If you don't want to make your mod dependent on the mod suite, I guess the only other thing that you can do, you'll have to leave out the code when I start referencing mod suite stuff, but you will have to make sure that you note that users will have to turn off the 5 count rope breaks manually before running this match. Otherwise things will break. So anywho, now that that's out of the way, let's get this started. So I'm going to go ahead and start adding some general variables that we'll be referencing throughout the match. The first thing that we want to add is UWFi uses a point system. So the points are per team, not per wrestler. So we need to go ahead and add a way of tracking points. So public static int array, and then I just called this wrestler points because it's easy to remember, equals new int, and we only need 2 because we're going to disable this in multi-man matches like battle royals and things. UWFi did not run battle royals, just singles and tag team matches, so there's no need for anything more than 2. The second thing we're going to need is, so the way that we're inserting the code for takedowns and KOs is that we're going to do it on the player update. Well, that player update updates every frame, and we only want to count the takedowns and the KOs once. Otherwise, they just subtract points every frame, and that would not be good. The match would end very quickly. So we need a way of keeping track of which wrestlers have already had their takedowns or KOs recorded. So what we're going to do is 2 bool arrays. So we'll do public static bool array takedown recorded equals new bool and then 8. And then instead of adding the semicolon here, you go ahead and add a curly bracket. And what we're going to do is type false 8 times, separated by commas. I think that should be 8, and then add the semicolon. So essentially, you have you're setting up a new bool array where everything defaults to false. And then we're going to do the same thing for the next one, except we're going to call this one KO recorded equals new bool bracket 8, and then you need the curly brackets, and then you can actually just cut and paste this false since they're both length 8 bool arrays, and we do want them all to default to false. So now you should have 2 bool arrays, one called takedown recorded, one called KO recorded. They should all have a dimension of 8, and they should all default to false. This next line is if you want to make it mod suite compatible, you need a bool to store the 5 count check. Because the way that I have it set up is that the user doesn't have to worry about it. It checks for the 5 count. It will store the user's setting from before this match, turn it off, disable the ability for the user to turn it back on until the match is over, and then restore the user's previous setting and enable it to be turned back on. So if you're not going to make it mod count or mod suite compatible, you don't need this next line, but it's another bool. So public static bool, and I called it 5 count, and we're just going to default it to false. And then we need a bool to check and see if this is a UWFi match. We're going to reference this pretty much in every method where we run UWFi code. So we need another bool, public static bool is UWFi equals false. And we'll change that at match creation if indeed it is a UWFi match. And like the First Blood and the Mask versus Mask match, we need a flag if it ends in a certain way so that we can change the result text. So this is going to be public static bool points ending equals false. So that we'll set that to true if a team runs out of points. So we want to change it to say TKO by point loss. And then we need a few more. We're almost done with the general variables that will be used throughout the whole thing. The next one is foul count, and this is how many fouls each team has. So we need public static int array, and I just called this foul count because that's what it is, equals new int array size 2. And then you can go ahead and add the curly brackets and default them both to 0. They should default to 0 all on their own, but I just set them to 0 just in case. The next thing we need is a list of legal moves. So I'm going to cut and paste this from my already finished project, and I will read them to you, but this avoids me having to type them all out again. So in UWFi, they have a certain set of rules, and basically it is you can't punch with a closed fist to the head. So I got rid of knuckle arrows and knuckle pats. You cannot elbow with the point of the elbow, so elbow to the crown and all the elbow stamps are out. You cannot kick to the head of a downed opponent, so stomping to the face, stomping to the neck, and clap kick are out. You cannot thumb or rake the eyes, so those are out, and you can't blatantly choke somebody, like windpipe choke them, so the choke attack is out. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set up a list of strings that contains all of the illegal moves that are from categories that maybe not, like, because not all punches are illegal. It's just specific punches. So you can't just set all punches to illegal. So yeah, that's what we're going to do here. So you're going to want to set up a public static list of string illegal moves is what I called it, and it equals a new list of string, and you're going to use the curly brackets again, and I did it in a nice list. You can do them on the same line if you want. I find they look better if you do them like this. So you're going to need the curly brackets, and then you need the following, and all of these are separated by commas. It'll be knuckle arrow, knuckle pat, elbow to the crown, knuckle stamp parentheses neck end parentheses, knuckle stamp parentheses arm end parentheses, knuckle stamp elbow stamp. So if I said knuckle stamp earlier, it should be elbow stamp parentheses leg end parentheses, and before the first parentheses there's a space in all of those. Stomping space parentheses face end parentheses, stomping space parentheses neck end parentheses, clap kick, thumbing to the eyes B, face raking, and choke attack. And those will all be illegal moves in UWFi. You will lose a certain amount of points for doing them depending on how many fouls you have. So if you have 3 fouls, you will lose 3 points for doing one of those moves. If it's your first foul, you will lose 1 point, etc., etc. So it basically goes up exponentially. If you have 4 fouls, you'll lose 4 points, etc. And when you finish with that, you end the curly bracket and then you add your semicolon. And then the second list we need are the instant DQ moves. These are moves that are so illegal that they have no place in like a shoot fight or a worked shoot, because they look retarded if you're trying to run it in a legit fashion or make it look legit. And so you want to set up another public static list of string. I call these instant DQ, and it equals a new list of string. And again, you're going to use the curly brackets to set up the list ahead of time or at construction. And you're going to add the following between the curly brackets: giant steel knuckles, brass knuckle punch, weapon attack, and scythe attack. So if a wrestler uses any of those, they will lose all of their points and be immediately disqualified. So there are those two. And that is all of the general variables that we need for this match. So the first thing that we're going to want to do, obviously, is the first thing that we do in pretty much every match that we do. We're going to need to set up the match rules at match creation. So set up public static void, set up match rules, and you can just, we don't need any parameters there, but we do need to get the match setting. So match setting, I called my match setting M setting, it's just easy, equals global work dot inst dot match setting, which you should be fairly familiar with at this point. We use it a fair bit. I put this outside of the class. You don't want to do that. Make sure your match rules is inside of the class. Otherwise, it'll flip out. Okay, so now that we've got the match setting, we're going to use that to make sure that it is not a death match. If it's a death match, it won't set up a UWFi rules match, even if that checkbox is checked. And we're going to use it to make sure that it is not a battle royal. So the first thing we want to do is if msetting.arena equals venue enum, and then we want barbed wire, and then we're going to do or. And if you have not done one of these in a while, or don't remember, or is a double vertical line, which is shift backspace. So or msetting.arena equals venue enum cage, or msetting.arena equals venue enum.dodecagon, or msetting.arena equals venue enum.landmine barbed wire, or msetting.arena equals venue enum.landmine fluorescent lamp. And those are all of the special arenas that involve either death matches or cage matches or UFC style matches. And so if any of those are true, we just return. We don't need to go any farther because you don't want to have a UWFi rules match in any of those. And if you do, just leave it, just exclude it from that command, and the match will work fine in that particular thing. But remember that some of those matches have special rules, like you are not going to get rope breaks in a barbed wire match, and that screws up the rule set of UWFi. So, yeah, I recommend just leaving it the way it is. And the second thing that we need to check in match setting is if msetting dot battle royal kind does not equal battle royal kind enum dot off return. We do not want to run this in multi-man matches. We do not have the points set up for it. You can go ahead and expand it to multi-man matches if you want. It will work. I just didn't use it because I wanted to keep it as true to UWFi as I could in the game. So I did not, because they never ran any battle royals. I never ran anything but singles and tag team matches, really, as far as their own rules went. So if it is a battle royal, if it does not equal off, return. And remember, does not equal is exclamation point equal sign. The exclamation point is not. So in C# code, so that says not equals. And then we need to go check and see if the user has checked the box. So my match selection form is literally called match selection form. So if match selection form dot instance dot, and this is going to change for you depending on what you use. I use radio buttons because you can't mix and match them. Only one radio button in one container can be selected at a time. So that makes it real easy for you to set up things that can't be mixed and matched. So radio button 5 is what mine is. Dot checked. And if it's checked, it is, we set the is UWFi equals true. Then we come down one more and we go if not is UWFi return. And so that will basically set it as a UWFi match, and if it hasn't done that, it will return. I just realized I forgot one thing. So before the match selection form here, what we want to do is UWFi equals false. That way it resets every time you look for a match, because in the way that I had it set up currently, what would have happened is if you had previously run a UWFi's rules match, it would have stayed true because it wasn't being reset. And that isn't good for anybody. That's not what we want. So there is that. But yeah, so we want to set it to false and then check and set it to true. So here's where we reset everything else. What the hell is it trying to tell me? Do you want to reload it? Sure, yeah, reload it. I have the finished product up open on my other screen so I can reference it, and I just saved it over there because I added the missing part to my actual code, and then it recognized that and flipped out and was like, do you want to reload? And it's like, yeah, sure, that's fine. Okay, so now we start setting the other stuff that we need. So that points ending, we need to set that to false because it's no longer a point. We just started the match. It can't be ending on points yet. So here is another part of the mod suite code. So we need to set 5 count equals false, and then we check the 5 count. So if MSC form, and MSC form is the more match options form from the mod suite. So anytime you need to check the more match options form, you call MSC form.instance. And so the 5 count on a rope break is checkbox 7. I know I said I would eventually make a list of what all the checkboxes do because there are like 30 something of them, but it's checkbox 7. So if MSC form.instance.checkbox7.checked, you come down here and you say 5 count equals true, and then what we're going to do is we're going to turn off the check, and then we're going to disable that checkbox. So msc.instance.checkbox7.checked equals false, and msc form.instance.checkbox7.enabled equals false. So that will turn off the check, which turns off 5 counts, and it will disable that from being changed until we do the end match code. So again, if you're not going to include the reference to carlzilla.dll, You do not need any of that 5-count code or the MSC form code, but you will need to make it noted somewhere that you need to turn that off if the user is using it. So this just automates that, basically. So then we're going to start changing the rules so that they more closely meet the rules for UWFi. So we want mSetting.victoryCondition equals victoryCondition enum only give up, so only submissions. There are no pinfalls in UWFi. mSetting dot is 10 count KO equals true. There were 10 counts. mSetting dot is lumberjack equals true. You couldn't go outside. I don't know whether you lost points. You did. It didn't seem to happen in any of the matches that I remember seeing in UWFi where they took points away, unless somebody like actively went outside to avoid fighting. But I don't think that's certainly not going to happen in a lumberjack match with the computer, and I'm not really going to worry about it. If the player wants to cheat their way out of it, there's not much I can do. So I didn't bother to include, like, if you're out of the ring, lose a point stuff, because it seemed to be on the referee's discretion. So, but yeah, I did enable lumberjack, and it doesn't matter what the user sets in the initial match settings, it will always be on. So they can't go out of the ring anyway now. So mSetting.isFoulCount equals false. There are no DQs. Foul, like illegal moves, will lose you points, and when you run out of points, you lose the match, but they're not instant DQs unless there are a couple of the, if you whip out a scythe in a UWFi match, I'm sure that you were probably going to lose. But, so fouls aren't really, you don't need the referee making the 5 count. mSetting.is out of ring count equals false. Since it's lumberjack, you don't even want them trying to make the count. It's silly. And then mSetting.isCutPlay equals false. So in their tag team matches, they did not allow the non-legal man to come in and make a save or anything like that. So cut play is forced off in these matches. And then what we're going to need to do now is reset all of those, the takedown recorded and KO recorded and foul count and wrestler point arrays. So the easiest way to do this is just go up here, and this is honestly why I had you write them up here, because otherwise you would have to write them down there, and just copy everything, everything after the public static bool bracket, and then come down here and just paste them in. And that way they reset every match, and they all reset to the default of false. And here is where we set up the initial wrestler points. So we need wrestler points 0 equals 15, because that's every wrestler started with 15 points unless it was a tag match, and then each side started with 21 points. So wrestler points 1 equals 15. And there we go. And now we're going to check and see if they have tag partners. So to do that, you're going to need to check some stuff in match settings. So if mSetting dot match wrestler info 1, because we're checking for the, what is it? I guess it would be the blue team or the red team, whatever team's on the left side of the ring. We're checking for them. So that their tag partner is going to be in slot 1 if it exists. Dot entry. That means if they are if the user has made a valid selection in that spot, and mSetting dot is second. mSetting dot match wrestler info 1.is second. I was like, why can't I find this? And this should be not. So you're going to come back out to right before the M setting and put a little exclamation point. So it should say exclamation point M setting dot match wrestler info index 1 dot is second. So basically, if the user made a selection and told you that and told the game that it is not a manager, you need to do wrestle points 0 equals 21 instead of 15. And then we're going to do the same thing for spot 5. So we come up here, we just copy and paste it down. And instead of 1, we want 5 here. And then instead of 0, we want 1. So that says if there is a wrestler in spot 5 and he is not a second, then go ahead and set the second team's wrestler points to 21. And that is literally all we need for the match setup. So let's go ahead and write our hook here. So hook, and then we need to give it a target class, which is going to be match main. So target class equals match main. And then we need, of course, a target method. And this is going to be our lovely create players method that we use all the time. And then we need an injection location equals int.max value. So we're just putting it at the very end of the method. We just want to insert it there. And inject direction equals this is going to be before. And then we need inject flags. And this is going to be none. We don't need any. And group, this is going to be whatever you called your group in the group description that I told you how to write. I called mine UWFi. So go ahead and do that. And that will get that all set up. So that will set up the UWFi rules. Well, all of the ones that can be set within FirePro already. You'll still have to do some coding magic to get the less... the rules that FirePro doesn't have defaults for, like subtracting points on knockdowns and that sort of thing. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to do public static void track player, and this has a parameter of player, and I called the player PLOBJ. So what we need here is a check to see if it's a UWFi match. So if not is UWFi, return. So that will just quit this code if it's not the right kind of match. So now, we want to use this to track the player. And when we say track the player, we mean, is the player down? And if he's down, is he down for a certain amount of time? And is the player in a KO state, like taking a 10 count from the referee? So the first thing that I want to check for is the KO count. So if plobj.state equals pl state in num dot s. Oh, I didn't do that. There we go. Dot s. And I think it's s underscore KO count or something like that. KOCNT, yep. Okay, so there's that. And then within this if statement, we need another if statement that is if not KO recorded, and then the index will be plobj.plidx. So if that player index is KO has not been recorded, we're going to go ahead and do some stuff and then record that and then set that to true. So what we're going to need to do is we need to figure out which side or which team the player is on. So if plobj.plidx is less than 4, which means that he's on the team on the left side of the ring, we need wrestler points at 0 minus equals 4. So that will subtract 4 points from whatever value is there. And then we need to check to make sure it doesn't go below 0, because, I mean, what's the point? If wrestler points 0, it just makes the, when it displays how many points are left for each wrestler, it just makes it look nicer. So if wrestler points is less than 0, wrestler points equals 0. So there we go. And that is literally all you need to do to subtract the points. We're going to use that code a lot. And then we need an else, so that if the player index is not less than 4, it will do this instead. So wrestler points 1 minus equals 4. And then we're going to do the exact same thing with the if statement. If wrestler points 1 is less than 0, wrestler points in index 1 equals 0. So there we go. That literally subtracts the points, and so that's all you need to do there. Then you're going to come down, still within the if player object.state is the KO count. You got to make sure you're still within those brackets. And what we're going to do is disp notification.inst.show, and this is going to throw a squiggly red line under you for now, because we don't have this. We don't have that method yet, but we're going to create it here in a few. So get team name parentheses 1 plus quotations, and then a colon and a space, and then an end quote plus, and then we want wrestler points 0, and then toString plus, and then a quotation space, and then PTS, and then another space, and then I use 3 what are they called? 3 hashes or dashes to denote the difference in teams. So then you're going to need to do get team name 2. So we got plus get team name 2. Oh, I put it in squiggle brackets for some reason. Plus, and then, you know, the same thing you did over there to denote the, and then we need wrestler points 1 dot toString plus, and then points. And I think that should get you a full, a full account of the wrestler names and the points. And like I said, you are going to have 2 red lines underneath get team name, and that's fine. We'll add that in a few minutes, and then they will go away. So, and then what we want to do is ko recorded dot plobj dot plidx, and then we're going to set that to true. And then we're going to actually do the same thing for takedown. We don't want KOs to also record takedown points, so we set this to true as well. Takedown recorded plobj.plidx again, and this also equals true. And now, anytime we subtract points in a method, we need to check and see if it triggers a loss. So again, This next block of code is going to reference a method that you don't have yet. Don't freak out. We will add the method in a minute. It's just I'm going in order, and so in the for the sake of not jumping around like crazy, there'll just be a red line under them for a minute or two. So if wrestler points in index 0 is less than or equal to 0, and wrestler points in index 1 is less than or equal to 0, we want to do trigger loss parentheses 0. And the parentheses is going to indicate which team is losing. And so 0 means it's a draw, and to do it for both teams. So that's all you need to do to trigger the draw. And then we need to set one up where the team 1 loses. So we got if wrestler points in index 0 is less than or equal to 0, trigger loss, not return, trigger loss 1, and then we need to go ahead and do it for team 2. So if wrestler points in index 1 is less than or equal to 0, trigger loss 2. And so again, just sort of like I said with the code that subtracts points, we are going to be using or copy and pasting that quite a bit. Basically in any method that we subtract points in. So just keep that in mind. So that was for a KO count, and if they are not in a KO count, we need to go ahead and check if they are down. So now we need if or else if, because we don't want to check for both of them. So if they're in a KO count, it won't even check to see if they're down. It will only check that they're in a KO count. So else if plobj.state equals pl state enum dot down, and there are two settings that we need here. We need down face down, or plobj.state equals pl state enum dot down face up. So those are both of the down states. So if that's true, we do another check to see if the takedown is recorded or knockdown, or I think I called it takedown, but really it's a knockdown. Takedown recorded, plobj.plidx again. So if that is not recorded, we're going to go ahead and do some code. And what I did here is, since I can't really check for, I don't want it to trigger every single time a wrestler falls down, because that just isn't it isn't going to make for good gameplay. And I don't think that UWFi was even that stringent about it. It was mostly like if you got knocked down by a big move or a heavy kick or something like that. So what I did here was I set a check for downtime and last damage. So if plobj.downtime is greater than 180, so that's 3 seconds, and plobj.last damage was greater than or equal to 3,000. And that triggered often enough that, especially in late match or with bigger moves, but it wasn't so often that like that everybody was constantly getting points subtracted from them. And you can go back, and if this is too much for you or too little for you, you can go ahead and adjust the downtime and the damage thresholds to make them smaller or bigger or whatever you need. All you got to do is change the numbers. So if this is, you know what, I'm not even going to type that. I'm just going to go ahead and go up here, and we're just going to copy this whole block of code here. So the if-else blocks from the KO recorded, and we're just going to go ahead and plop them right down in here. The only difference is that a knockdown, instead of being worth being a 3-point or a 4-point loss, is only a 3-point loss if it's a knockdown, but the referee doesn't feel the need to count. So you're going to change both of the -=4s to -=3s. And then you're going to go back up here, and you're going to get this block of code. So really, you could have copied the whole thing, apparently. Well, not quite, because there's actually a curly bracket in there that you don't need that would have screwed everything up. So you don't want that. And you go ahead and you paste that, except that we don't need the KO recorded anymore. You can get rid of that. So you should have disp notification.inst.show and the get team names and the points and all of that jazz. And then you need to set the takedown recorded to true for that player object. So, and then of course you need to check and make sure that it doesn't trigger a loss, and if it does, you just go ahead and trigger the loss. So, but that's all done. And so now you're going to need to find your the last bracket for the if plobject.state and come back out, because you don't want to be in the if or else if statements for this next part. What we're going to do is check if they do have the KO or takedown recorded, but they're not in those states anymore. We're going to go ahead and set that to false. So we go if KO recorded, and then plobj.plidx, and then if plobj.state equals plenum or stateenum.s underscore KO count. Oh, you don't want equals. Sorry. You want exclamation point equals does not equal KO count. You go KO recorded plobj.plidx equals false. So basically that says if they already had a KO recorded but they're no longer in the KO state, to go ahead and set that to false so that the next time they're KO'd, it will be recorded. And you do the same thing for the takedown. So if takedown recorded plobj.plidx, and then if plobj.state does not equal plstateenum.down face down, or plobj.state does not equal pl.stateenum down face up. And for this one, you also need to add the KO count, because we set it in the KO thing too. So, or plobj.state does not equal plstateenum.s underscore KO count. And then you go takedown recorded plobj.plidx equals false. And that's it for that entire method. Somebody is banging on something upstairs, and it is very loud and irritating. So now we're going to go ahead and write our hook. So we're going to go in here and go hook, and we go target class equals player, target method equals update player, injection location equals 0. We just want to do it at the beginning. Injection direction equals before. Injection flags equals hook inject flags dot pass invoking instance. That's why we have the player PLOBJ there in the parameters, because we want the invoking instance. That way we can reference it. And then we need the group equals UWFi. So there we go. That will hook it into the right spot, and everything will be good. So now, for the sake of clarity and not having all of those red squiggly lines, we are going to go ahead and do the trigger loss and get team names. Let me find them in the already finished code here. So for the trigger loss, code, you could do a private static void trigger loss and int and side. So that is going to allow you to trigger the loss. And the one thing that you're going to need to do here is, so you're going to need the referee animation table, as it is a private array in the referee class in assembly C#, which means you can't set it to public using a field access call, because if you set an array to public using a field access call, you will get all kinds of problems because the array will not be properly initialized. So what you need to do is come over here to ILSpy, and let me go ahead and show you ILSpy here. It should be loaded there. It is. Good. So now that we've got ILSpy up, what you're going to go do is find the referee class in this nice list over here. I have so many classes open that I probably should have closed them before I started this. So what you're going to try to find is the cctor method, and it will have a little green box as opposed to a blue or pink box, and that's the constructor method. And this is basically called when the game loads. And what we're going to look for is, they call it EXPR 421, but it's going to be a big long enum of, or a big long array array of basic skill enums, a 56 long array, and we're going to copy all of it all the way down to where they stop defining it. So the last line that you need to copy will be EXPR underscore 421 index 54 equals global basic skill enum dot check foul loop 1. And so you just copy all of that out of there, and you go back into your Visual Studio, and you paste it. And that's going to look ugly. And then the next thing you're going to do is highlight it all in here. You're going to hit Control H, and you're going to do, in the first box up here, you're going to do EXPR underscore 421. And then you're going to come down to this second box, and you're going to call it REFANMTBL, with RAT being capitalized. And then you're going to hit Replace All. And so that is going to change this to the referee animation table that you can actually reference in your code. I forgot to. Okay, well, I forgot to highlight that last bit. Make sure you don't do what I did. If you do, you can just copy ref animation table from the line above, or just type it in yourself. But yeah, all you need to do is make sure that they're all ref animation table. All right, so now that you've done that, let's get the referee object. So you need referee. I called it mref equals referee man dot inst dot get referee object, and that will get your referee for the match. And then I think I explained this to you in one of the other matches, but what we're going to do is set the player direction to left. That way it makes it very easy for the game to figure out what's going on in our animation table and get the right thing. So mref.pldir, I can't type right now, pldir equals player dir enum left. Then we are going to have him declare victory, mref dot state equals mref.state enum declare victory, and then mref.match result equals match result enum.ko, and then mref.request referee animation, and then you need ref anmtbl, and then you need 31 plus match data dot anm offset ofs tbl underscore 2 dir, and then another bracket set, and then an int. You're turning his direction into an int, and then mref.pldir. So that's going to request the end match animation, facing the right direction so he doesn't warp all over the place. And then what we need to do is decide which side he is declaring the loser. So we need int loser equals -1. And then a thingy, and then we need a switch statement, and this is basically an if statement without having to write a whole bunch of else ifs or whatever else, a whole bunch of nesting or cascading if statements. So switch and then side, which is what we called that int at the very beginning of the method. And then you need a case 0, and case 0 is of course the tie. And always put a break on your case statements right as you make them. Otherwise you can forget, and then things can fall through, and it's just a pain. So case 1 break, and then case 2 break. And since those can be the only 3 options that get passed to this thing, we don't need anything else. You go back up to case 0 and insert before the break. So what we need here is to cycle through all of the members of team 1 and get the player that has the right or is legal. So for int equals 0, or for int I equals 0. I is less than 4, I plus plus. And what we're going to do is if player man dot inst dot get plobj I dot has right loser equals I, and break out of the for statement so it doesn't continue looping because you found what you need. And then you've got mref.sentence loser, or sentence lose, and then you need loser. And so that will, oh, I don't need that in the for statement. I need that here. Okay, so that will sentence the player on the first team to lose in a draw, and then we need to do it for the second team. So we're going to set up another for statement. So we go for int I equals 4, I is less than 8, I plus plus, and now we go if player man.inst.getPLOBJ I dot has right loser equals I break, and then we come out of the for statement one more time, and you go mref.sentence lose, and we go I again. Or no, not I, loser. So now that will sentence both teams to lose. So that is what you want in a draw. And it also means that you have all of the code you need for the next two cases as well. The only thing that we need to do here is mref.matchResult equals matchResultEnum.ko draw instead of just a regular KO. So now we have case 1. And in case 1, we're going to come up here and we're going to get the code for the first half of case 0. So it's the for statement that loops 0 through 3, and we put that there. And for case 2, we do the exact same thing, but for the for loop that goes from 4 to 8. And the only other thing that we need to do is in case 1, after the mref.sentence lose, we go points ending equals true on both of these. And that is the entirety of the trigger loss method. So now we need to do the get team name. So this can also be a private static, but this is a string instead of a void. Get team name, and we also need an int and a side. So what we're going to need here is a string result equals string.empty, and then a list string and wrestlers equals new list of string, and this is just a habit I have. I don't know whether you need to do it since you just declared a new list, but I always clear these lists before I use them. That way, in case there's something left over, it doesn't duplicate or become a problem. So now we're going to want to do switch, another switch statement, and side. And we don't need a case 0 in this case because we never call it with a case 0. So we need case 1 and case 2, and add the breaks, and then go back up to case 1. And what we need to do here is, once again, we need a for loop that loops through all of the players on team 1. So for int I equals 0, I is less than 4, I plus plus, and then we need to declare a player. So player PLOBJ equals player man.inst.getPLOBJ in slot I. And then we need an if PLOBJ does not exist, you just continue. Otherwise, you run this code. So if not PLOBJ dot is second, and not plobj.isSleep. You go wrestlers.add database.get wrestler full name plobj.resparam. And so that will add the wrestler's name into the list. And now we essentially need to do the same thing for case 2. So you can go ahead and copy and paste down into case 2. We're going to have to change the for loop though. So instead of into I, what we need is I equals 4, I is less than 8, I plus plus. And we need one of these right here. Oh, no, we need one of these right here, not one right there. All right. I guess we need one of those there too. Yep, because that's the end of the switch statement. This should be the end of the string. That is the end of the class, and so we actually need one more of these. There we go. Now we're right. Yeah, pasting sometimes can be a pain if you overwrite or if you copy over or paste over one of the curly brackets. So just kind of be aware of what you're doing there. I do that a lot, and then I'm like, why is this all screwed up? And I have to go back and figure it out. So that basically adds all of the wrestlers from Team 2. So now we can go out of the switch statement. We don't need to be in it anymore. It served its purpose. So now what we need to do is result equals string dot join, and we're going to join with a comma space, and then we need to put a comma not in quotations this time. Wrestlers RESTLERS dot toArray and then what we need to do is if wrestlers dot count equals 2, result equals result dot replace, and you're going to replace that comma space with a and sign. That way it is grammatically correct. And so what you're going to do now is if wrestlers dot count is greater than 2, we're going to change it so that it is more grammatically correct still. And we need result equals result dot replace or result dot insert on this one. And you want to insert basically after the comma. So we need result dot last index of, and then of course, you don't hit enter, comma. And that is not actually in, that needs to be in single quotes because they need a character there. So we need to add it at the comma plus 1. Nope. Right here, plus 1. And we want to insert the and sign. So, and. So that will insert an ampersand after the comma, which will make it comma space and instead of whatever it was before, which would just be a comma, which looks awkward to me when it's just a big list of names separated by a comma, and there's never an and in it. And then what we want to do is return result. And so that should take care of both of your trigger loss and get team names. And it does. So you are good to go there. Now the next thing we need to do is check for a couple of the other rules that UWFi used, like moves that are illegal, moves that automatically score you points, like if the move is a suplex, you automatically got points, that sort of thing. So we're going to need one more method, and this method is going to be public static void, because it's going to be hooked in, so it needs to be public. We're just going to call this remove PTS, remove points. And this needs the following parameters. It needs an int, PL underscore IDX. It needs a skill data, SD. And it needs a skill slot ATTR, skill slot attribute, and that's going to be skill ATTR. We never use skill ATTR, but you do need it because the hook is gonna pass it forward even though we never use it. So it needs to be there to accept that. So if not is UWFi, return. So now we can start working on the removing of points. So what we're going to need is a bool called points PTS, change. And we're going to do this every time we change points, and then we're going to check it when we do the display notification. That way, because this will display every time a move is done if you don't do that, and we don't want that. So points change equals false. Then we need to get the player objects. So we need to get player. I called this attacker player at ATK equals player man.inst.get player object. And then this is going to reference that PL underscore IDX that we passed in. And then we need player DEF. I don't need it to be capitalized. Player man.inst.get PLOBJ. And this is going to be PLOBJ, or this is going to be ATK dot target player index. So that will get us our players. So let's set it so that if they do a suplex, the person that they're suplexing loses a point. So if SD.filtering type equals skill filtering type suplex, and then we need to get what team the attacking player is on. So if PL IDX underscore IDX is less than 4, that means they're on team 1. We need to take the points away from wrestlers on team 2. So wrestler points 1 minus minus. And then you need to do the if wrestler points 1. Here we go. Let's see if I can find it up here. Yeah, there we go. If wrestler points 1 is less than 0, wrestler points 1 equals 0. So you just can go ahead and cut and paste that and bring it back down, just for the sake of saving yourself some time. And then you need to go here and do an else command, just like we did before. And then you can go ahead and take all of this and cut and paste, and then we're just going to change the 1s to 0s. There we go. And we're probably going to cut and paste that a few times too. And then we want to come down here to right after the else command and go points change equals true. And now we want to check for headbutts because headbutts are all illegal. But since all headbutts are illegal, we can just use the filtering type headbutt, and anytime a headbutt is done, it will trigger and a point loss. So now we go fsd.filtering type equals filtering type headbutt. And then you come up here and you pull this whole code, paste it in. Except this time, since we're not taking points away from the other team, we're taking points away from the attacker's team, we need to change this to be the opposite way around. So the first, if it's less than 4, it needs to subtract from wrestler point 0. If it's greater than 4, it needs to subtract from wrestler points in index 1. And that should cover that. And then the next thing we need to check for is if they're using any other illegal moves. So what we're going to do is remember we set up that illegal move list at the beginning of the thing. So we're going to go if illegal moves.contains sd.skillname bracket 1, which is the English skill name, which is what we used. If you used bracket 0, it would check it against the Japanese skill name, which is not what we want. And one thing I forgot about the headbutt, so come back up real quick, is right before we subtract the wrestler points, we want to change the foul count at 0, and that's going to be ++. And then instead of subtracting just 1 point, these need to subtract a amount of points that is equal to the amount of fouls that they have committed. So we're going to change this to minus equals foul count 0. And then we're going to do the same thing down here for 1. So we're going to go foul count 1 ++. And then we're going to want to go wrestler points 1 minus equals foul count in position 1. There we go. So yeah, I forgot to do that in my game for the headbutt, or in the code for the headbutt, because I copied and pasted. But that's absolutely what we want. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is finish up that illegal move stuff. And so what we want to do is we're just going to take and copy this all the way down, and we're going to paste it in. So if they're doing an illegal move, the same thing is going to happen as if they headbutt. The only difference that we want here is that if the illegal move is a submission move, and like the chokehold or something like that, we're going to end the loop so that the move automatically ends. If you don't want that to happen, like if you'd rather them just lose a point and they're able to continue to wail on them, you can leave this out. So we need to do def, the defending player, animator dot is requested loop end, and we're going to set that to true. And then def dot set downtime. And you do need to do this if you set the loop to true, but don't set the downtime to be 0, it doesn't always trigger, and you don't want that. So set the downtime to 0, and that will end the illegal move. Essentially, they'll lose a point, they'll stop doing it, and it will be done. So that's what we want there. And now we want to check for the instant DQ moves. So if instant DQ dot contains, and then we need sd dot skill name 1, and then we don't really need, you can just come up and do this one, just grab one of these point change things, bring it down. And so if you got one with a foul count, you can go ahead and remove that. It is not necessary for this. So what you're going to need to do here is minus equals instead of foul count. If it's there, or whatever you put, it is going to be minus equals 22. And this will, so in the tag team match, they can have up to 21 points. So this will work even in tag team matches. It will remove enough points that there's no way that they could continue the match. So it works pretty well. And then you can do this again. I know I did it in my game, is that you just set the loop to end, because a lot of those instant DQ moves are, the weapon attacks and the choke, or not the choke, the scythe attack are all looped. So this will set that loop to end, and it'll set the downtime to 0. That way you can, they can stop doing it. So, and so there is one other thing that we need to check for that we did not include in the illegal move lists, and I don't know why. We could have, but I didn't. So you have two options for doing this. You can go up and add the following to your illegal moves list, not your instant DQ list, but your illegal moves, which are mount punches, back mount punches, and mount knuckle arrow. Or you can write the following code with me, and essentially it will have the exact same. Let's just go up and add them, because it's going to have the exact same effect. I think I originally had two blocks of code because the illegal move thing didn't originally have the loop, the animation ending thing, but now it does, so there's really no reason not to. Mount punches, back mount punches, helps if I spell punches right, and mount knuckle arrow. Okay, so that will add those. So we don't need the extra thing of code that I was just telling you about, because it works perfectly fine there. So now that we have done that and everything is good, we can come down here, and if points change, what you're going to need to do is you want to display another notification. So display notification.inst.show, and it's going to be the exact same thing as you showed in your when you were doing the wrestler update. So you can just go ahead and copy and paste all of that. You can also copy and paste the trigger loss portion of code from the update section, and you're going to bring it down, and you're going to paste it in the if points change. If you will need to get rid of the takedown recorded stuff, it's not necessary here. So you do that, and then you've got the display notification, and I moved this out of the points change, the trigger loss, just so that it always runs after a move, just to be sure. I just find it to be more like you're likely to catch weird bugs or potential bugs if you have this running every time, than if you just only did it on a points change. I haven't run into any problem with it, but it's just more of a catch-all than it is a necessity. And so that should pretty much get you done with that particular bit of code. And there are 3 more pieces of code that we need to do. The rope break, because a rope break in UWFi triggers a loss of points. So we do public static void. I called this rope break point loss. And we reference the referee, mref. And of course we add our is UWF if it's not a UWFi match. We return. Otherwise, if mref dot target player index is less than 4, we're going to subtract from team 1. So wrestler points 0 minus minus. Then of course we do if wrestler points 0 is less than 0. The wrestler points in 0 equals 0. Oop, gotta add a 0 there. Stupid. Okay. So, and then we need if mref dot. Oh, no we don't. We just need an else. Trying to make things harder on myself. And then we can cut and paste this down, except changing the zeros to a 1. And then of course we want to display the notification and all that wonderful stuff. You're just going to pull it out of you can copy and paste it from the method right above it, but you are going to need to pull it out of the if points change, since points change doesn't exist there. So there we go. So now it will display the notification and check for a loss on points change. Now we need to write the hook for this. So it is going to be in the referee class. So hook target class equals referee. Target method equals start underscore submission check. Injection location equals 36. If you want to see where I got 36 from, you can come over here and go to your referee class in ILSpy and go into the start underscore submission check. And if you look down here, you have if match setting dot rope or dot is rope check and global ring dot inst dot test collision octagon edge underscore in ring equals a bunch of stuff. Then it does the rope break. So I got that by just checking. You click on the little gear up here if you have Reflexel installed, and it'll bring up a list of IL commands. And you go down and you find that 36 is right before they do the loop end. So that is where I want to set the rope break loss. So now we can go back into our first blood here. And so that's why I picked 36. And then we go injection direction. Oh, I screwed up and I put injection direction instead of injection location. Injection location equals 36. Inject direction equals before. I believe it was before, right? Yes, it was before. And then inject flags equals hook inject flags dot pass evoking instance once again. And then of course your group equals UWFi. So there you go. That sets up your rope break point loss. And the only other two things that you need to do is if you have hooked your Carlzilla.dll and are working with the The mod suite, you need to reset the 5 count. So let's do that real quick. So public static void equals public static void reset 5 count. And if it is not a is UWFi match, then we don't need to worry about it. And we go return. And then MSC form.instance.checkbox 7, which if you remember right, I told you is the 5 count on rope breaks. Checked equals 5 count. Oops. MSC form.instance.checkbox 7.enabled equals true. And that's it for that one. So what we want to do is we want to hook this onto the exit match function in match main. So it will run when the match quits out. So we want hook target class equals match main. Target method equals exit match. Injection location equals 0. I did it again. Injection location equals 0. Inject direction equals hook inject direction dot before. Except that I killed not after, before. Inject flags equals none. And group equals UWFi. And make sure that your quotation is there, otherwise it will flip out on you. And that's all you need for that one. And then the last one is exactly like what you did in the First Blood match, except that you're, instead of saying, replacing KO with TK or with First Blood, you're replacing it with TKO by point loss. So the easiest way to deal with this is to open up your First Blood match, go down to your where you set the match text, open it up, copy it. You can close your First Blood match now, and then you just paste it in. And then I change it from set First Blood finish text to set points, set PTS loss finish text. And when it says blood ending, you can just change that to PTS ending. And then KO, up here where it says string.replace KO with First Blood, you just change this to TKO by point loss. And there you go. That is all you need there. And that is all you need. That should get you a First Blood. Jesus, my brain or something. A UWFi styles match with as close to the rules as you could possibly get in Fire Pro. I took a little bit of liberties with certain things like the downs, because it's hard to decide what constitutes a down and what doesn't, so I just kind of went for what was the most fun to watch rather than, what is probably the most accurate. But otherwise, it's pretty much a UWFi style match in Fire Pro. Alrighty, that is it for me today. I will be back with another tutorial some other time, and I hope to see some UWFi style matches being posted. Alrighty then.